a relatively dry and fast lesson. You're going to hate this because I know I hated this. You kind of learned this in grade 9. It's kind of review, but then this is still useful for us because we are learning about climates and biomes and climate graphs. They're talking about climates of different parts of the world. So we're going to learn about climatographs and how to read them. And then the different biomes of Canada and then some biomes not in Canada. All right, so here goes. So the first slide, you have this. The Earth is divided into different climate zones, and those zones reflect how warm that part of the world is. So the more you are, the closer you are to the poles, the colder the climate, and the closer you are to the equator, the warmer the climate. And we talked about this already. Now we can further subdivide the climate zones into biomes, and those are even smaller units. Different biomes have different climates, and we can represent the climate using a graph like this one. This is called a climatograph. How do you read a climatograph? Well, it's two parts. First, you have on the bottom in blue the precipitation. Okay, on the x-axis, you see JFMA. Those are months of the year: January, February, March, all the way to December. And on the left side, up the y-axis, you have precipitation. So in blue, it tells you the average precipitation of every single month in that region. Okay. And on the right side, you have temperature in degrees Celsius. So that's the red curve above. And that is supposed to tell you the average temperature of every single month. So that's how you read a climatograph. And different biomes, they have their own signature climatograph. And we're going to learn 8 different biomes. All right, so what is a biome? Well, it is a division of the biosphere. So the biosphere, just to remind you, is all the living things. We subdivide them into similar climate regions. Okay, so a biome has similar temperature and precipitation. Now, they don't have to be restricted to a specific area or, let's say, a continent. The same biome can be found on multiple continents scattered throughout the world, as long as they have similar temperature and precipitation, therefore similar organisms. They are the same biome. Okay, so here in that chart, it gives you a sample of some of the biomes. That chart is arranged in a way such that precipitation increases as you go to the right, and temperature increases as you go up. So on the top right corner, you have very wet and very warm. That is the tropical rainforest. Bottom left, you have very dry and very cold. That's the tundra. Okay, if you go up, you have very dry and very hot. That's a desert. You see how this works? So that gives you an idea of where each biome stands in terms of temperature and precipitation. So the next part of the lesson, I am going to basically show you each biome. This is gonna suck. If I were to teach this in class, I would just post these on the wall and ask you to walk around and jot them down as if you're exploring. But now, since we're online, you can't do that. So you're just gonna have to listen to me introduce 8 biomes. Some of them are really similar. I'm gonna tell you tips and tricks on how to remember which one is which. Those are tips and tricks that I found to be helpful, because this is very confusing. Like, a lot of them are extremely similar. I remember the first time learning this, I read it over, I was like, okay, I think I get this, and then I give myself a test. I failed miserably. I don't remember. So the first one is tundra. This is one of the easier ones to remember because it is very unique amongst the other biomes. So the tundra is located near the Arctic and also on the rim of the South Pole of Antarctica. So in the the top right corner, you have a world map. In turquoise, you have regions classified as tundra. So Canada has a tundra all the way up north. Now, a tundra is basically a cold desert. You do not have trees there. If you go into the tundra, it is too cold and too dry for trees to actually grow. So the plant life you can find in the tundra are usually short shrubs or moss. Okay, you're not going to see big plants. And the soil in the tundra is so cold that it is completely frozen. Okay, it's called the permafrost. Perma meaning permanent, frost, ice. So basically it means forever ice. Now the tundra is not a good place for agriculture. And if you look at the climate graph, the precipitation is sadly like near 20-ish, below 20. That is really low. Okay, that means on average 20 millimeters, or not even 20. Like in January, there's like 7 millimeters of precipitation in the whole month. And the temperature, if you look at the temperature scale, it is utterly cold. In the summer, July and August, the highest you'll reach is around 5. Okay, it is 5 degrees right now outside. That's the hottest temperature you're going to get in the tundra. And in the winter, it is freezing cold. It goes below minus 25. If we complain about the cold at minus 10, imagine minus 25. You're not going to go outside. So that's the tundra. Some animals live there, like polar bears, moose, like big animals with fur coats. So that's the tundra. How do you remember the tundra? It is one of the cold ones and very low.
How do we measure the precipitation in a region?
Well, we literally measure it. Like you estimate how much it rains or snows every day, and you take the average.
I see, but that would only be within a certain area of where you can collect.
Well, yeah, like we collect samples of data from different areas. Well, same biome, different area, and then we average it out, like statistically. This is obviously not precise. This is an estimation based on different measurements. It is not too far off, though. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, any other questions before we go on? Okay, so how do you remember the tundra? It is one of the coldest ones. It is not the coldest one, but it is the second coldest one, which is still very unique among the 8 biomes. Look at the temperature. If you dip below 0 all the way reaching negative 25, you're probably the tundra, okay? And you have low precipitation. So if I show you that climate graph, you will immediately tell me that this is the tundra because of the temperature, okay? That's a dead giveaway.
I bet.
Say what? Okay, so next one. The boreal forest. This is the largest biome in Canada. This is also very north. If you look on the map in green, that highlights the boreal forest. So Russia has the largest boreal forest in the world, followed by Canada. So the boreal forest basically is the forest of pine trees, those evergreen forests. They're really, really cold. It is up north. You go to Northwest Territories or Nunavut or northern Quebec, you're going to see those forests, those trees. And if you look at the climate graph, look at the temperatures. The highest temperature in the summer is around 15 degrees. That is a pretty mild and cool summer. But in the wintertime, it is unforgivingly cold, minus 15 to minus 25-ish. That's a regular winter day. That is freezing. Okay, and the plant life is mostly just coniferous trees. The animals, again, large animals like the caribou, moose, some squirrels. It does snow a lot, okay? Winters are long and cold. Summers are short and cool. You can't really grow a lot of food in the boreal forest. because of the temperature and precipitation. Now, you do have enough rain, enough for trees to grow, but still not very high. So this is one of the harder ones to remember. It is very similar to another biome. When we get to that biome, I'll highlight the similarities and the differences. But as of now, the boreal forest is a forest. There are lots of biomes with the word forest in it. Okay, boreal forest is the forest of coniferous trees. Cold forest, okay, low temperature, relatively low precipitation. All right, any questions about the boreal forest? No? Okay. Moving on to the next one. So this is the one I'm talking about that is very similar to the boreal forest. This is a grassland. If you look on the map, grasslands typically are found near the middle of a continent. Alberta has a lot of grassland, so does part of Asia. Now, the prairies in Canada, we're known to have basically no trees, all grass, and the land is relatively flat. Now, why are there no trees? The reason is not because it's too cold. Alberta is cold, but not that cold. The reason is it doesn't get a lot of precipitation. And we talked about why on Monday, because of the rain shadow. So you don't have a lot of rain, and trees need water to grow. So if you don't have a lot of rain, you're not going to get trees. All you can get are little short grass and shrubs. So that's the vegetation. Short plant life, like grass, doesn't really need a lot of water. And the climate graph on the right, look, this is extremely similar to the boreal forest. Let me just go back to the boreal forest and you make a comparison. Look, same shape, okay? How do you distinguish between the two? Well, you look at the temperature. Grassland is warmer than the boreal forest. That exceeds 15 degrees. It doesn't go all the way to negative 15. Okay, and the precipitation, if you compare, this one peaks at around 60. Boreal peaks at around 80. Okay, because it has more water, trees can grow. This one is drier, so you can't have trees. That's the difference. Grassland, lower precipitation but higher temperature. Boreal forest, you have higher precipitation but a little bit lower in temperature. But the shape of the graph, they're the same. Okay, and which is why I find these two to be the most confusing out of all of them. We good? Okay, so that's the prairies. The next biome, this is our own biome, the temperate deciduous forest. Again, look at the map. A lot of places in Europe, in Toronto, the east of Asia, in China, Korea, Japan, those are temperate deciduous forests. If you look outside right now, you're not going to see any leaves on many trees because they've fallen off the tree. Those are deciduous trees. The leaves turn yellow during autumn, and precipitation is fairly constant throughout the year. Now, how do you distinguish this one? The seasons are very distinct from each other. Okay. Winters are cold, summers are hot. You can easily tell what season you're in. Unlike some other biomes where the seasons don't really make much of a difference. So this one, the vegetation is mostly deciduous trees. It is warm enough in the summer and not too cold in the winter to justify a lot of trees because you have precipitation and warmth. Okay, and these are perfect land for growing agriculture, which is why in Ontario we have lots of farmland. You don't see that in the city, but if you leave the city, you can see on the road, on the side of the roads, lots of crops. Okay, any questions about this one? So this is the one that you're in. Okay, no questions, we're moving on.
Wait, I have one. Will we need to determine, so you're on a test, you're going to give us these graphs and you're going to be like, what climate is, what biome is this?
Sure, yeah. I could just bust out a climate graph and ask you what biome is that, yeah. Yeah, that's why I'm teaching you how to distinguish between them. So the temperate deciduous forest, rain is relatively similar. in the months, and you have warm summers and cool winters, and you're not that cold. See, well, this one is similar to the grassland, but that one has a lot more water. You see what I'm saying? All right, so next. This one is one of the unique ones. This is one of the easiest ones, the temperate rainforest. It is a rainforest, meaning that you have a lot of water. Look at the amount of precipitation. The scale is different. The minimum you have is around 100. The maximum is 400. So lots and lots of precipitation. British Columbia has the only temperate rainforest in Canada. There's some temperate rainforest found in southern China and in Chile. It's really rare. It's one of the smallest biomes in the world. The temperature is warm, temperate. It's not too hot. It's not cold. If you look at the temperature graph, it is fairly flat, but you do see a noticeable bump in temperature near August and July. Highest temperature is around 15, but notice that it doesn't dip below zero. Okay, it never dips below zero. Vancouver rarely goes below zero in the wintertime. So because of the warm temperature throughout the year and the abundance of water, you have tall trees. That's why you get a rainforest. And in BC, you have one of the largest trees in the world, the sequoia dendron. That tree is so big, you need like around 12 people holding each other's hands to be able to hug the tree. Okay, if you have an opportunity, go to BC, check out the sequoia. It's really beautiful. Okay, moving on. Yes. So the key thing: lots of water, hundreds of millimeters, and relatively mild temperature. This is in contrast to the tropical rainforest, which is found near the equator. Okay, the tropical rainforest also has a lot of rain. How do you distinguish between the tropical rainforest and the temperate rainforest? You look at the temperature. Look at how flat that temperature curve is. Basically, you get 25 degrees every day throughout the year. That doesn't change ever because you're found on the equator. If you're on the equator, you're always going to be hot. There are no seasons. If you come from a warm place, let's say Vietnam or southern China, they don't really have a concept of winter. It is monsoon season and dry season. That's it. Either it rains a lot or not so much. So in those areas, you have a ton of trees. Okay, warm plus water equals trees. And because you have a ton of trees, you have massive forests, and forests can host a lot of animals. So you have the largest biodiversity in the world found in the tropical rainforest. Unfortunately, in Brazil, deforestation is quickly, destroying the tropical rainforest through either cutting or recently a huge fire. So lots of animals perished, a lot of biodiversity lost. A lot of people argue that the rainforest doesn't belong to just Brazil; it belongs to the world because the ecosystem is interconnected. If you wreck biodiversity in the rainforest, that's going to have effects everywhere in the world. So they urged the Brazilian government to do something about it, in which the Brazilian government responded by saying, get out of my face. And also in Central Africa, you have rainforest, and Indonesia, which is another sad story. Lots of tree burning in Indonesia to make farmland to basically grow palm oil. Anyway, that's the tropical rainforest. Massive amounts of rain, flat 25-degree temperature. That's probably one of the easiest ones, if not the easiest one to recognize. Like I learned that one first.
Mr. Joe.
Yes.
How come the tropical rainforest has like less precipitation than the temperate rainforest if it's supposed to be more like rain?
Honestly, I'm not sure. The only explanation I can think of is, if you go back, the temperate rainforest is usually found near water, to begin with, like on the coastline, whereas the tropical rainforest it extends to a greater area. But yeah, like they are similar, not too different. They are still some different, but I don't know how to account for that difference. Just know that there's a ton of rain. Okay, the key distinction, that's the temperature curve.
Wait, so, but on the test, like that, the tropical rainforest shows the graphs as if they had more rain. So,
no. If you see hundreds of millimeters of rain, it's one of those rainforests. It's either temperate or tropical. Okay, to know the difference, look at the temperature curve.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, so moving on, we're almost through. So the rest of it, they're easy. The desert is, again, one of the easiest ones. It is mostly hot. There are some cold deserts, but most deserts are hot. If you look on the map, they're situated around 30 degrees in latitude, Northern Africa, the Arabia Peninsula, Middle East, Mongolia, Turkey, and then Western North America. It's north of Mexico and somewhere in California. So those, and Australia, those are deserts, okay? One of the lowest biodiversities in the world. If you don't have a lot of water, typically it's very difficult for life to survive. In the desert, look at the precipitation. Below 20 in every single month. In some months, you barely have anything. Okay, so these organisms in the desert, they've all evolved ways to work around the fact that there's very little water. Cactus, the plant that grows in the desert, they don't have broad leaves. Their leaves are evolved to become needles, and that doesn't lose a lot of water. And their stems, they're waterproof. Okay, so a cactus within it holds a lot of water, so it doesn't have to depend on rain. And a lot of animals in the desert, they are scaly, like snakes, lizards. The scales also prevent water loss. The camels are able to withstand not having water for months. They can store water in their humps. Okay, so temperature normally in a desert is really hot. It goes up to 35. The coldest day in the desert is about 15 degrees. So very easy to tell which climate graph is the desert. Very hot, no rain. Okay, does that make sense, folks? All right. The last biome that we're going to, yes, okay.
It says there's like a desert in southern BC, but the temperature doesn't go that high, does it? Like it goes below 15, doesn't it?
Oh yeah. Canada has very, very little desert, if you want to call it a desert at all. But yes, this is an average. Remember, there are cold deserts. In Mongolia, there's a desert that is cold. The temperature actually goes like below zero. But this is an average. Most deserts are hot. They raise the average to be warm. You see what I'm saying?
Okay.
All right, the last biome is, again, an easy one. This is permanent ice. These are found near the poles. The South Pole, Antarctica, the entire continent is, well, with the exception of the coastlines, those are permanent ice. And also in Greenland, that is mostly permanent ice. As the name suggests, it is literally just ice, okay? You have very few vegetation. Lichens and mosses, those are the best you're going to get. Basically, those the plants that look like stains. If you go to a forest, there's some green things growing on a rock and on the side of a tree. Those are mosses. Lichens are they're not even plants. Okay, those are fungi in symbiosis with protists. Basically, you don't have grass, you don't have trees, you don't have shrubs. Okay, if you ever go to Greenland, I don't know why you would. That's what you're going to see: ice everywhere. And if you look at the climate graph, precipitation is pathetically low, okay, 20-ish. And check out the temperature. It is freezing every single day. Okay, you don't go above 0, and the coldest temperature hits around July and August, minus 25 degrees-ish on average. The reason for that is most of permanent ice is in the southern hemisphere in Antarctica. Their winter is July and August. Okay, so that's how I would identify that biome. If you see a temperature curve that is ridiculously cold and it dips in August and July, congratulations, you found permanent ice. Okay, this is different from the tundra. The tundra is the first one that we learned. Tundra also super duper cold, but the tundra is warm in the summer. And this is very different from permanent ice.
Mr. Zhou,
Mm-hmm.
is permanent ice like actually just completely permanent, or is it just there for like a really long time?
Okay,
Is it there
permanent.
for a really long time? Like
They're there
how
for a
long?
really long time. They're not actually permanent. One of the concerns about climate change is those supposedly permanent ice is melting. You see, like they're permanent for the sake of, the climate is not going to get that warm anytime soon. But since climate change is happening, it is speeding up the rate at which the Earth warms. The permanent ice that is supposed to be trapped in ice is melting into the oceans, which raises a ton of other problems. So they're not really permanent. You could melt them, and they are melting. You see what I'm saying?
Wait, Mr. Joe,
Yes.
isn't that good though? Like we can inhabit the land there if like climate change.
Yeah, okay. Technically, sure. Canada, if climate change were to hit, a lot of land in Canada will become warmer. But that is like one of the few benefits. There are many hazards of climate change, and the benefits don't outweigh the costs. Even in Canada, where we benefit supposedly the most from climate change, we are still kind of screwed in other ways. If the ice melts into the ocean, the sea level is going to rise. And if you live near a coastline, that's not going to be good for your city. And in fact, many coastal cities today are being flooded slowly in Miami. And the Netherlands, especially, the Netherlands is a lowland. It is actually below sea level. So you can imagine what happens when sea level would rise and what happens to Netherlands.
So
And
the
also,
weather becomes more, I don't know, unpredictable, right?
the weather will change. I wouldn't say unpredictable. We can still predict it if we know the pattern. But the current weather pattern, it will definitely change. It will change the ocean salinity. It will change the ocean temperature. So yes, that disrupts the thermohaline circulation in the ocean. That will change the global climate. And so yeah, lots of issues to go along with that. So that's something we don't want. Okay, so any other questions about permanent ice? All right, so that's it for the 8 biomes. I consider all day and explain, but you just have to buckle down and figure out ways to remember which one is which. I'm telling you my strategies. I don't know if you like those strategies. You can find other ways if you want. So why are we learning about this? So it is important to recognize which part of the world have which type of climate, so that when it changes, we will know. Okay, we need this information to plan our economy. It's very different to live in, let's say, a dry country like Saudi Arabia versus living in northern Canada. The economy is going to be structured differently to adapt to your local environment. So we need to understand which part of the world has what kind of climate, and only then can we predict what will happen if the climate were to change, and how that would affect our economy and our livelihood. So here's an example of what I'm talking about. So wheat is quite important for humans. That's how we derive rice. Now, India is one of the largest producers of wheat in the world. Problem, that area that produces wheat in India, climate change is going to hit. By 2050, it's going to be a lot drier. And that will decrease wheat production. And yeah, that's not going to be good for world hunger. Okay, we're going to lose a lot of food income in the near and far future because of drying of our planet. So raising the temperature will lose a lot of water. That will be too dry to grow food. That's bad. Okay? But in Canada, though, that could be better for Canada. Now, Canada is a very cold place. There are very few areas in Canada in which we can actually grow wheat, namely in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and southern Ontario. Those are our largest production of agriculture. Now, if the climate were to warm in 2050, in green, those areas will be eligible to grow wheat. Okay, you might think, wait, that's a good thing. That's definitely going to affect Canadian economy. So we have to adapt to this fact. But the problem is those areas are basically rocks. Those are the Canadian Shield, like oldest rock on Earth, like billions of years old. They don't have soil. So that's not going to help us. But that will still change our perspective of where we can grow different kinds of plants and vegetables. Okay, so similar things will happen to the United States. It will get drier, so where they can grow wheat now, they won't be able to grow wheat, let's say, in 30 years. So we need to account for these changes. Hopefully, we can avert this. Now, I say that, but I am pretty pessimistic about what we can do about climate change. I was a little bit more optimistic 10 years ago, but now, yeah, judging from the last election, how they argue about what they do, yeah, we're pretty much screwed. Yeah, very sad way to end the lesson. Any questions, folks? We learned about climate graphs, and biomes. No? Okay, so if not,
yeah, can you go over the I forget what it's called, the assignment we have for the flood? Like, what do we have to do for that?
oh, the assignment for the flood?
Yeah,
Right.
before the flood video.
Before the flood. Okay, so you're supposed to watch the video. Let me just pull that up real quick to show you on the screen.
Wait, when does that due?
Hold on, let me end the stream here because I don't need to post that.